Whoa, what's up, y'all? Happy Tuesday. This is part two of On the Run Chronicles. I wanted to just touch bases and just share with you guys just a little bit of my past. For those who are just tapping into this video, look at part one. But I want to just actually talk about while I was on a run as a teenager. What was the shift? What changed me? What is what my mother said is either going to make you or break you. So what broke me to have a shift, have a change of heart? And when I was in Phoenix, Arizona, I had connected, like I shared before, with my friend who I found out was my cousin Jazz, and him and I, we've known each other for a while. But when I was out there, I initially supposed to go to school, didn't go to school because I was upset with my uncle because at the time I needed two references. I needed a reference in Baltimore and I needed a reference in Phoenix. And he was going to be my connector in Phoenix. I couldn't use Jazz because we were, roomies. So I had to use somebody else. And I remember going to High Tech Institute and, they they was like, hey, listen, you need a reference or else you can't go to school. So I called my uncle, and God rest his soul, Uncle Roy. He thought I was asking for a favor, which I wasn't, because me and my uncle, we never really had uh, a good relationship as far as like him knowing me. But all he knew was why I was out there, and I had just spoke with him a week before, and he had said that he wanted me and my cousin Jazz to come out there for Thanksgiving because he had shared, well, my mother had shared with him what I was going through with my legal situation. And he was like, you know what, nephew, you can just come out here and stay with me. Now, he lived in Kingman, Arizona. Kingman, Arizona is some ways, it's not in Phoenix. So you need to catch a plane to get there. And when I went to High Tech Institute to, update my paperwork so that way I can start school, and I contacted him to get a reference. He was immediately said, "Oh, I can't do it, nephew." And I said, "Uncle Roy, what are you talking about?" "Nephew, I can't do it." I said, "Uncle Roy, I'm asking because I need a reference." And he just would not let me get a word in. And I think that it might have hit him, or maybe he just was realizing that he probably wanted to stay far away from me, which some people did. Some people, and I don't blame them, because when you have multiple warrants or you have like this extra baggage, especially with legal situations, you got to be mindful. You got to be careful, because if anybody actually, is in connection with you, knowing that you have like this outstanding warrant, then they can be in trouble too. And it took me years to really understand that and realize that. So probably that's what my uncle was thinking, or maybe he just really was just not wanting to do anything with me. So I decided I had a bad temper back in the day. Like people would tell me, even Jazz would tell me, like, "Yo, you remember the time you blacked out?" And I don't remember any of that. Like, I would have incidences where I would do a lot of crazy things, and that actually changed. I don't even do that anymore. When people remind me of what I used to do, I'm like, "Yo, nah, yo, you lying," because that's not me. I've been able to, learn from those mistakes and grow from them, and I'm more mature now. So I left, y'all. I left the High Tech Institute, didn't turn back. The guy Kim was blowing up my phone. At the time I had a Boost mobile phone, the bloop bloop. And that phone, I lost that phone like 2 weeks after me being in Phoenix. I lost it. Me and Jazz, we was running from the police. And that's the night I lost my fronts. Fronts, for y'all don't know, that's golds. I lost my golds and I lost my Nextel. So not only did I not have an ID, I didn't have a phone. I lost my fronts. So I was stripped away of everything, and it was hard for me to get a job out there. So, me, I'm used to just, if I don't have it, I'm taking it. So me and Jazz, we had fell into some hardships. You know what I mean? We lost his place that, he was originally staying, because the neighbor downstairs was racist and he would make complaints, and Jazz was on maybe like one or two complaints left, and they were going to kick us out, and that's what wound up happening. So then we had moved to another spot, and we moved several times, but it was this one spot that we moved. I think it was like the third or fourth spot we moved at. I got so many stories, so I'm not going to go into those different of as what I call them chapters. But I'm gonna talk about the hustle. I'm gonna talk about how when I started to realize that what I had to eat what I kill. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, I had to pretty much make sure that I make it a point to hustle. You know what I mean? It wasn't even an option. So I took the hustle that I learned in Baltimore with selling my shirts and I brought that to Phoenix. I remember going into the malls and, you know, attempting to uh, put these uh, items that I was selling, is what I think I shared in the first one. I attempted to change the narrative a bit by, implementing what the styles that they wasn't receiving. And then at the time, nobody was even doing what I was doing. Nobody was making Chucky shirts. Nobody was making Scarface Air Force Ones. In that time, you didn't see it. And a lot of the things I'm grateful for, but the hustle was definitely something that I had to really adopt quickly because if I didn't eat. I couldn't eat at night. Like I remember it was a time where me and Jazz we didn't have any food and it was like, yo, like we gotta hit up these stores and we gotta put stuff in our dip. You know what I mean? And I remember one time I put a whole I was staying with somebody, I met somebody out there and I would kick it with her. And I remember one time she was like, yeah, I want to cook you something. Go to the store and give me like a steak and this, that, and the third. So you know what I did, yo? I went to the store, yo, and Phoenix, if you don't know, Phoenix is hot. So, no matter sometimes you can get away with a hoodie, sometimes you can, but in most cases when I was out there, it was hot out there, man. I put a whole steak in my dip, man. I'm talking about put the and I walked out. It was times where I would take things from this. It was like a video store called Suncoast, and I remember people kept on asking me, "Have I watched The Wire?" And I got so upset. No, I haven't watched The Wire to the point where I went to Suncoast. It's old DVDs, it's old CDs. I mean, And I remember, how some people try to be slick and they, take like the senses off and all that. Man, I took that joint. Remember, I told y'all in the past episodes that shoplifting class they taught criminals how to steal. Man, I just took that joint and just walked out. Alarm went off and everything. I ain't care. I was like, I wanted somebody to stop me. You know what I mean? I was just young and crazy, dog. So, but I think what changed for me was when I was doing the same mistakes out there as I was doing in Baltimore, whereas I was just, trying to doing forgery. I met up with this wrong cat, and he was just asking me, "Do I do checks?" And he took it another level though, and I remember I got into it. Well, I'm not going to disclose so much information right now. Wait for the book, you know what I mean? But when I remember one of my friend, he got in trouble, and I was just close to getting in that same predicament. I said, "Yeah, I gotta change, dog. Like something gotta change, man. It's no way that I got locked up out in Phoenix, Arizona. I was out there only for about a year and some change, almost 2 years, and I got locked up out there more times than I did in Baltimore. And I've been in Baltimore my whole entire lifetime in Baltimore, and only a year and some change in Phoenix. And I got locked up more out there than I did in Baltimore at that time. And then when I was homeless, it was times where I couldn't I the places where I was staying, when I kept doing the same thing or when I did the same thing, that place was compromised. Because I remember what happened when I was in Baltimore when the feds raided my house. And I remember when my friend he attempted to do something that he just was trying to jump ahead of the individual who set the things up, but it backfired. And I had to move quickly because I learned what happened in Baltimore that you had to move quickly. You got to move the stuff out. So then I was forced out of the spot where I was living. And then I started staying with the person who I was telling you with. I was like, "Yeah, I want to cook your steak." We were just friends, And then she was like, "Look, you ain't got no place to stay. Imagine you being in Phoenix, Arizona, and you trying to fake the funk like you're not homeless. Eventually, that heat going to show. That heat going to tell. You going to smell. You know what I mean?" So I was able to stay with her, and she couldn't really, allow people to stay with her because she was going to college. Like she was in Brahmin school. So Brahmin school was like a nursing school, and you could not allow anybody to stay with you. They made it where as though even in the dorms or even the place that you rent, that under the bed you couldn't put nothing under the bed. It was just like wood there. And I remember one time, I will always at this time, that's when I shared this information before when I used to sell the t-shirts in Phoenix, Arizona Mall in part one. But I remember when I was selling the pounds and, for this gang member, I'm not gonna share which gang he was, but I was selling a quarter pounds for yo, and the t-shirts that I would have all in the same bag, everything just smelled like weed, yo. Like it was reeking. Like you could put, like I'm telling you, like you could put the bag inside the closet and you knew I was there. You know what I mean? Um, so it was one time I was, you know, caught off guard because my friend who I wound up dating, who we wound up being together, that's who I met. That's who I was connected to when I traveled to Spokane, Washington. But I remember one time somebody ratted me out. It was one of her roommates. I think she was mad because of something. Her name was Katie. Her roommate name was Katie. She knocked on the door. It was something that happened, but I thought this individual was knocking on the door, and it turned out that it was the people that was in charge of the Bryan school. So they waited to the person who I was talking to. They waited till she left to bring the person on to knock on the door. And if anybody get caught inside of your place, you broke the rules, and your scholarship it can be compromised if I'm not mistaken. So I remember when he was banging on the door, I didn't answer. That's when I realized, like, I tried to go underneath the what's the name? It was nothing to go there. I tried to open the windows. It's only one way in, one way out. I remember I didn't answer the door. They said, "Hey, look, we know somebody's in there because you can only lock the door if somebody is inside." So then when they stopped, because she was allowing me to stay there, she knew I ain't nowhere else to stay. She was allowing me to stay there so I can bathe. And what I would do is when I would go outdoors, I would just hustle. You know what I mean? And as I think I shared in part one, when the incident happened where I had to stop selling the shirts inside the mall, I was full blown just hustling, just the weed, just whatever I can get my hands on, uh, recruiting people to help me steal fabric so that way I can make stuff, and really serving two masters, because not because I wanted to, but it was the only way of survival. And I got out of there, man. When they tried to knock on the door and they wasn't, they said, we're coming back with the police. I left, and then I started to navigate through the same complex where she stayed, because my friends stayed in that same complex too, but they had people that they were staying with. I found this one spot that we would always blow weed in. And we would blow weed in this one spot we called the B spot, because rolling blunts, we call it the B spot. But this B spot, we had found a couch that we would put inside the B spot. It was like in a small room where they would store like lawnmowers and all the things that people, if you were cleaning up or if you were a maintenance person inside of a complex, this was all the stuff was stored at. But I broke into this one spot, and we recognized that when we broke into this one spot, it was vacant. And that's what we would do a lot. We did it a lot of times. We broke into a lot of people's houses. You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah, so I remember, we would deck this one B spot out. We call it the B spot, smoking it. Um, it was like these old blunts that we used to smoke out of back in the day called Dutch Masters. We would, empty out the blunt guts all around the floors. And if you would have told me the whole time that was a place that I would have been resting my head, because I had nowhere to stay and nowhere to go, I wouldn't have been. I would have been telling my peers like, "Yo, you don't pee in here, because this is where I'm gonna be laying my head," or "Don't do this, don't do that." You know how you seen The Pursuit of Happiness when he was holding the door? That's how I was when the maintenance man tried to go in there one morning. See, the thing about Phoenix is, like, around 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning, if wherever you are doesn't have any like electricity, that's what they call SRP, it get hot. It gets so hot, y'all. It's like 120-degree weather out there, man. So then I did that, and and then I was able to finally get a few jobs. And I worked at this telemarketing job, and with my side hustle and with that job, I was able to, get a place. And I helped the person who I was seeing. I helped her out because she was running out of money. And the same job that she worked at, they let her go because you only had 3 occurrences and you get let go. So by the time I came there, I was able to help her, you know. And we did that all the way to the time where we were leaving at the same time. She was leaving in December to go back to Spokane. I was leaving in December to go back to Baltimore because I was like, you know what, I'm going to turn myself in. I didn't know. Nah, I didn't. That time I came back home in 2005, I remember linking with the individuals who I told you I was with, connected to. We was bucking off the guns on the roofs of the individuals who we felt like had betrayed us that year. From when I don't know if I shared that with you guys, my past acquaintance, my homie, when he had got locked up doing 25 to life, we felt as though as that we need to retaliate on just not attacking anyone, but kind of standing in front of the person's household and just letting off shots in the sky, in the air on New Year's Eve. And I have a photo of me when I had that same blue bag that I was telling you about that was smelling like weed. I remember my mother took a picture of me with a Polaroid, and I had a Cincinnati baseball jersey with the blue baggy pants with the white and red Air Force Ones that was on the sole. And I was like, wow, my mother didn't even know right after she took that photo where I was headed or what I was getting into. And then I had to recognize, like, yo, like, nah, I'm not ready to, I ain't ready to stay here. You know what I'm saying? So then I contacted the person who I was seeing out there in Phoenix, connected with her. I said, yeah, she was like, you might as well come out here, just kick it. You know what I mean? Just figure out what you're going to do as far as your legal situation. And then I stayed out there almost around the same time that I stayed in Phoenix until I finally came back home. Finally came back home. And but when I was in Spokane, I did things the right way. I had a house. I mean, I'm sorry, I had a store that I co-owned called Uptown 410. Shout out to this guy named Gus. I hope he's still with us. I lost contact with him, but I had the key to a store. We connected. We collaborated together. Him and we had a falling out. I had a temper, y'all. Like, it was wild. Maybe another time I'll explain that story. But yeah, that was the hustle yard. And I had to pivot at some point. I had to pivot. I had to recognize, like, yo, you can't keep doing this, man. Like, especially when I was homeless. When oh my gosh, y'all. Like, and then not being able to really be open with your mother. When my mother came out there to visit me, my mother and my two sisters, my mother stayed in the La Quinta Hotel. It was 120-degree weather, so it was affecting my mother's health. She wasn't used to that heat. My mother didn't like the heat. But when my sisters came, it was so embarrassing because I had no place for them to visit me. And I remember when I wanted to give them like some gifts when they came. So I went into this antique shop and I stole like some African stuff. Like, I was like a thief, y'all. Like, and I gave them I gave them gifts. It's a picture of me that my mother took me, a Polaroid picture of me holding my hands up like this. And I got this white Dickie shirt on that I made that had the Scarface. It was a Scarface Dickie shirt that I made. And I had the red B hat because it represents Boston. And because, I mean, I'm sorry, it was Boston hat, but for me, the B stood for Baltimore because people didn't know what Baltimore was at that time. And I used to get frustrated. And every time people did know what Baltimore was, they would mention the Y. The Y only had like 2 or 3 seasons out at that moment, at that time. So, but yeah, I hustled to survive. I hustled to be able to eat and not because I want to, but because I had to. And in these moments, it made me and it broke me at the same time. But a person sometimes needs to be broken to be fixed or to be new again. And it took everything in me to break the pride. I had a lot of pride. I had a lot of arrogance that had to be broken in order for me to, by the time I was in Spokane, I was like, yo, I'm not doing nothing. It's all on me. And when I started to not do nothing, meaning like I haven't committed any crimes, it was like I started to develop how to edit. I started to really dive into my craft. And then when I came back to Baltimore from Spokane, I developed some new skills. My entrepreneurship skills was on another level. I was creating flyers. I was doing like really immersed in my gift. And then I came home and then I realized, like, okay, Like I'm just trying to contribute to society, but society was like, nah, you got a record. Like you can't. What? McDonald's wouldn't even hire me. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I feel like that will conclude the On a Run series. You feel me? I'm only here for 20 minutes. But please, guys, don't hesitate to leave comments. And thank you for all those who've shown love on those recent posts. I've seen y'all. Y'all been sending me messages individually, just thanking me for just sharing these stories. I didn't even know that these stories will be um, impacting you in this way, but I'm glad and I'm grateful that it's connecting with you, that you guys are able to, really relate, or some it resonates with you. So I'm grateful for that. And there's more to come. See you guys tomorrow on Story Time with Akio Evans. Peace.